Did you know something new is invented every 10 minutes? Join us as we speak to the innovators reinventing our world here on planet Earth and far, far beyond. Welcome to GTWN Now, a podcast brought to you by the Global Telecom Women's Network and sponsored by CMS Global. GTWN Now introduces the movers and the makers at the cutting edge of technology who are committed to keeping us all connected. In each episode, we invite a leading expert to share her experience building life-changing inventions in places and spaces that don't yet exist, and the inspiration they must muster to tackle the impossible. We also ask our guests to share tips, tools, and strategies to reach your own moonshot. I'm your host, Rosali Gitau, founder of Bixi FinTech for Women and Global Telecom Women's Network International Board member. Welcome to GTWN Now. Welcome back, GTWNers, and thank you for joining us for our fifth and final episode showcasing our annual publication, The Mobile Century. Here with us today to talk about this year's issue on digital humanism is probably the most on-the-nose speaker we've ever paired to a theme, a true champion of ensuring that the human stays at the center of digitization. She's the venerable Walda Roseman. Miss Roseman is the chair of the Arthur C Clarke Foundation. She's had a distinguished career as an executive, strategist, advocate, ICT expert, and entrepreneur, primarily in the international information and communications technology and entertainment sectors. She's also devoted much of her energies to promoting social and economic development worldwide through technology and public policy. She was honored by the United Nations Agency for ICT, known as the International Telecommunications Union, with its gold medal for advancing the roles of women in ICT and empowering young people to embrace technology and creativity as tools for positive economic and social change. Ms. Roseman was the founder and CEO of Compass Rose International, an international advisory firm that she established in 1993 and led until she joined the Internet Society in 2011. At the Internet Society, she served as the Chief Operating Officer and the Chief Strategic Communications Officer. Ms. Roseman founded the first International Communications Office of the Federal Communications Commission. She held executive positions with Intelsat, the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, National Public Radio, the former White House Office of Communications Policy, and the National Cable Television Association. Obviously, she's had a long history of serving on boards of nonprofit organizations affecting youth, refugees, international industry interests, music and the arts, as well as other charitable functions. So a very long and very distinguished career. So I am honored to welcome Walda to the show. Walda, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Rosali. You've set a very high bar for me. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to keep up with it during this conversation, but I'm delighted and honored to have been asked.
So I'm just going to jump right in. There is, one of your roles is obviously the chairman of the Arthur C Clarke Foundation. Maybe you can tell me a little bit more about your work there. What is this foundation? What's its mission? What's its origin story? How did you end up coming on board, given all of the different experiences that you've had?
Well, the origin was with Arthur C Clarke himself and the Nixon White House. In 1983, they had an International Satellite Day, and Arthur Clarke, who was well known but a Brit, was invited to be part of it. And so he joined a number of people in Washington, D.C. He agreed to put his name and his support behind the Arthur C Clarke Foundation, also a number of other satellite organizations, well, maybe one or two other satellite organizations. And he was very supportive of the organization until he passed in, I think it was 2007, at the age of 90. Clarke, for those who don't remember him, maybe young, much younger, um, but know something about satellites. He was an amazing man. He was a prolific and highly honored science fiction writer. For those of you who might have heard of seeing 2001: A Space Odyssey, he wrote the book and co-wrote the script with Stanley Kubrick. And there are a number of other books he wrote. But also, he was a scientist. And in 1946, he did the calculation for what we came to know as the geostationary satellite orbit. It was also called the Clarke orbit. What I think is most interesting about Clarke is that he had a wit and a vision. He created in 2001 A Space Odyssey, which was released in 1968, I believe. So the work went into it well before that. A story about a spaceship and a computer called HAL 9000. And in it, he envisioned that this computer was, we learned later in the next book he wrote, programmed to incorrectly overfocus on the safety of the spaceship. And he decided that at some point, the humans on the spaceship were a threat to the spaceship's safety, and that he knew more than they did. And so the foundation has seen and heard his witticisms and his visions. This one in particular is a warning. We've also seen what he has done and said as a challenge. The challenge being, how do we, as he did, promote creativity or imagination, pair it with expertise and determination to do good, and come up with something different, a new idea, something to benefit humanity, society, the earth, and the seas. How do we combine our creativity and explore the universe? And so the Arthur C Clarke Foundation mission is to recognize and promote the power of imagination in all its forms, combined with expertise or empiricism and hard work. There are a number of ways we do that, but that really is the core mission. He also loved the young people, and so do we. And we can get into that more, but he trusted the young people. He also warned way back there that for those who became enamored with screens, they should understand that data was not information, and information was not vision. And so we are looking to support vision.
That's it's prescient.
Yeah, he was prescient.
Yeah, it definitely prescient. And I say that because obviously, this episode is being recorded in April of 2025. And for anybody listening in the future, there's a lot going on right now. It's a very interesting period to live in because you're seeing a lot of convergence. You're seeing the convergence of kind of, artificial intelligence taking it to that next step. So the HAL 9000 kind of coming to life. You're also seeing the humans embarking on a lot of changes as well that, could be seen as potentially, contributing to our own self-destruction. So you're kind of, we're almost mirroring the space odyssey, but, outside of one small spaceship, it's, on our planet and possibly beyond. So prescient would be the apt word for the time of this recording. And when I first saw your challenge, I kept thinking, gosh, I wish this was here about 30 years earlier. And I kept wondering, maybe I just don't have that vision. Can you give us some contemporary examples of things that embody what the Arthur C Clarke Foundation is trying to foment? I'd really love to hear some concrete examples and share that with our audience, just to kind of, encourage a little bit of out of that box thinking.
Well, in 2017, we launched a program we call Unleash Imagination, Shape the Future. And under that umbrella, we are in the process, and we being an amazing group of people who helped come up with this idea, came up with the idea of the HAL 9000 Challenge. Now, as I've mentioned, we see HAL 9000 not as a threat in this instance. There are those who said, well, why would you name it HAL 9000? Because it was a warning and a challenge, an opportunity to find a way to make sure that what we saw with HAL 9000 is not our future.
Yeah.
To the contrary, that in an AI and advanced technology environment, we thrive. And even as the technology, which, as you know, is moving very, very quickly, and we're having predictions from some of those who have actually created it, that it won't be long before perhaps it will be so much faster and smarter, and even appearing to be sentient than we humans. And then what happens to us? Mm-mm-mm. Now, you're substantially younger than I am.
Jury's out.
And by the way, I say to young people, think of how you feel now, because when you get to be my age, you're going to feel pretty much the same way.
Oh, so don't tell me that.
there is a part of us, just unless we let it, doesn't age. We're always young at heart. Well, that's not a diversion. That really moves into the HAL 9000 challenge. We are hoping that we can find on an annual basis young people born in the year 2001 or since then, who have grown up thinking that AI is normal, that this is the way the world is, and who are comfortable with an advanced AI technical world, and therefore have ideas that those who are older just don't have.
Yeah.
And there are certainly those who are older who are looking for ways through this technology and thicket, so that the human being and the human spirit continues to thrive and dominate what happens in this world and perhaps other worlds by that time. But they don't think the way the young people do. So what I think is unique about the HAL 9000 Challenge is that if we can find some young people who have some fresh ideas of how to use or skirt within an AI environment, the threats, and in fact come up with some new ideas for the workforce, for example, or for the partnership between technology and the human, that we older people wouldn't think about. Take their ideas and those young people and pair them with some of the experts who are already working in that field and see if they can teach each other so that there is a cross-mentoring partnership and come up together with an actionable plan. So that what we're hoping is that we can take ideas and make them happen.
So I'm going to challenge you a hint on this, just out of curiosity. My first thought, I can't help it, I'm a lawyer. So you're going to collect a lot of young people, or you're going to propose to young people who are currently about 24 and younger. Is there a minimal age, or?
We're looking at high school and university age.
Okay. So kind of 15 to 24 years old, let's say 15 to 25 years old. And the proposition is, give us an idea as AI and digital full natives who spend the vast majority of their time online. Come up with an idea that could, preclude humanity from self-destruction. And then work intergenerationally to achieve this goal, because you might have the ideas, but obviously older generation has the resources, network, et cetera, to kind of allow the ideas to come to fruition.
And has the experience.
Yeah. So is there a world where, so this is the interesting thing, like you've worked in public policy for a number of years. I've worked in public policy for a number of years. Intergenerational kind of collaboration obviously has a lot of benefits. And I also work with very young people because my background, I work in tech. I do sense that timelines and, because they are digital natives, like there are things that they see that, like you aptly say, like we just don't see. But as having this challenge around the table of judging, are there going to be kind of their peers judging them on the merits of their ideas as well? Or is it going to be an intergenerational kind of judgment of the value of their ideation and whether or not they're going to win the challenge?
It'll be intergenerational.
And interesting. Okay, that's really interesting, because because I see how, if you look at the forums where they spend most of their time, it is very distinct. So I'm really curious, like how this is going to come be realized. And I say that I'm really interested because, part of why we're doing this podcast, we really want to promote this challenge and get more young people on board. And I'm really curious to hear what kind of ideas that they come up with. So one of the things I've noticed, particularly with young people, is they're really native. So part of being digitally native and AI native is they're very cognizant of a couple of things. And one is this idea of the attention economy. You've heard of this. Yeah. So basically you do things to whatever the thing is. That's why it's a lot of outrageous things to garner attention in the digital space. Right. And this generally lends itself to different types of, attention. So it's not always the most positive. And when I say positive, it's clearly a value-based judgment. So again, I can't judge what they're doing, but it's a value-based judgment, but not necessarily what we might intergenerationally consider the most positive outcome. So I'm really curious to see, what kind of ideas they can have in that attention economy space, because I think that could really move the needle. Because right now, the virtual world is kind of on that spiral of outrage information, outrage data. And if there was a way to get out of this spiral, we could kind of, move attention towards arguably things that would benefit humanity more than potentially the attention is benefiting us now.
Well,
What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I'm
Attention economy and
I
this.
mean, I'm very aware of that too,
Yeah.
and I'm very curious. Um, I don't know, and we will
Yeah.
see. We will
Yeah.
see whether it is those young people who have so successfully been developing the attention economy.
Ah, they're
Uh,
great at it.
they're great at it, whether those are the same ones that will come forward with ideas for how do we make sure that people continue to be employed, or how do we use it for the environment? Um, how do we develop an ethical base for it that still supports all these other interests?
Mm.
I don't know if that's what will come forward, but if it may well be those who are plowing the lines of the attention economy.
Yeah.
Um, we hope we can reach all of them with the challenge.
Fantastic. Well, I'll do my part with the young people on the team to push as many young people to join the challenge. Maybe you can give us a little bit about, when is the challenge going live? What are some details around it, so we can also, spread that around?
Well, right now, we are in things are moving so quickly that we are in the stage of final refinements,
Okay.
and also raising the funds for us to be able to start with a pilot. We'd like to have a pilot by the end of this year, because as you said, you're curious, we're curious. We want to make sure that this is working for all of us. There are a lot of ways where the people who are listening here can get involved. The young people, we can help us spread the word once we go out with the challenge, or they themselves, if they're uh, digital natives, true natives, may want to directly involve. We're looking to add to the steering committee young people and experienced people. Members from the steering committee will form the core of the panel of judges, and we would probably add others. And for those who are more of a somewhat more mature generation, in their leadership. And by the way, I am so impressed with how women and what women are doing in leadership of this industry, as well as others. But given where we started, which was almost right there, zero, we would love to have them help us build our financial foundation, so that we can give these young people some true financial incentives as well.
You're kind of like the anti the positive VC, venture capital fund, financing technology, creating the knowledge network and tools, and really incubating these, more like digitally positive technologies to the public. That's fantastic. So current status is finalizing the details for the challenge, looking to launch before the end of the year, and putting some finishing touches on steering committee and panels. So for anybody listening, there's roles for everybody and all ages to play in the culmination of the HAL 9000 challenge.
If I could just say too, there's also plenty for all talents.
That's a really important point.
We're not just STEM. STEM is important, but we're not asking somebody to create a new technology or technology application. If they can, that's great. but we also believe that the arts are going to be an important part of how we navigate our future in this world. We think the humanities will be critical. And so the soft talents are as important as the technical talents as we go forward.
You brought up earlier that the origin of the Arthur C Clarke Foundation, HAL 9000, was actually a story. It was, the Space Odyssey. And you're not the first person who's worked on hard tech in the course of this podcast. Our episode 10 was with the chairman of the Australian Space Association. And in the course of our interview, he really underlined, he's like, science or space exploration cannot be only occupied by scientists, and admitted he's like, he himself isn't a scientist, he's a business person. And he encouraged not only, a diversity of persons and perspectives, but storytelling. He said storytelling was so critical to where we are in space. Like, there's scientists, of course, more scientists need, but there's scientists, there's technologists, but there aren't people telling us which direction we're going. There's a handful, and some of them can get quite dystopic, and that might not be the direction that we want, necessarily to go in. So to your point, this notion of like, this challenge started with a storyteller. It can also invite other storytellers. And obviously my bias is with storytellers. I love writing. I love fiction. I write into fiction. And I think that that's something that I know that everybody can go on ChatGPT and easily, prompt ChatGPT to write a book. But that in and of itself, there's an inertia because it can only create things that have been created and that has been created. And the expanse of the human mind is still to be fully creative. So I think, this idea of it's not just for STEM, storytellers of all capacities, writers, painters, musicians, like this is also a challenge for them. And so I think that that's really fascinating. For those who are kind of what we call in my generation, I'm a millennial, we call them multi-hyphenates, people who didn't necessarily want to stay in their lane. So for those storytellers, scientists, painters, musicians, of which there are many, this is kind of the contest for you because it's not necessarily confined to one area. I mean, would you agree with that? What do you think the role is for storytelling in this?
Well, storytelling is huge. We every year give 3 awards. And that's the part of what the foundation does to promote the pairing of imagination with hard skills. We have given awards. We give an award every year to what the Imagination in Service to Society Award. And that one has gone to people like Stan. Well, he stands his what he calls himself, but Kenneth Robinson. We've given them. You talk about dystopian. We've given one to Margaret Atwood.
Oh. A woman after our own hearts.
A woman after our. You talk about prescient. I'm afraid I shouldn't say that, but there is some of that in there. And we've given, actually, and this one is fantasy, but there is a democratic moral to it, and the author is George R.R. Martin.
Of course, he was one of the first people I thought of.
And I could go on. We've given an award to Stephen Hawking. We've given awards to a number of satellite and CEOs. We've given awards to National Geographic Society. You talk about stories. To CERN. By the way, both of those heads of both of those organizations are women. And we go on, and we're in the process right now of choosing our awardees for this November. And I can tell you that one of them for imagination, I can't tell the name right now, is a woman who has done quite a bit, won Hugo and awards and a number of others, and she writes for young people as well as adults. And so the storytelling is a very important part of what we do. We are a sister organization. We actually were the parents who spun them off to the University of California, San Diego, the Arthur C Clarke Center for Human Imagination. And under their umbrella is the Clarion Workshop. The Clarion Workshop is the preeminent workshop
Yes.
for science fiction, fantasy, and now horror as well. And so
I hope that's not prescient.
we have not given any awards for horror yet. But they have been wonderful in helping us identify some of the finest storytellers in the world.
Well, that is, I'm very interested. Now I'm even more interested to see who is going to apply and then who is going to win the HAL 9000. Maybe, you're kind of, so much of your work and so much of your career and so much of this contest really is about, once again, putting the human at the center of technology to arguably avoid some of these dystopian outcomes. This year's issue of the Mobile Century. So every year, the Global Telecom Women's Network publishes its annual publication, the Mobile Century, which is an industry-leading publication looking at specific cross-sectoral themes. And this year, the focus was on digital humanism. Again, this idea of putting the human at the center. Probably not coincidentally, almost all of that, we had 12 articles in this year's issue, and almost all of them focused on artificial intelligence, for better or worse. AI was not the prompt of this year's theme. It was digital humanism, but clearly it's on the top of everyone's mind. I'd love to know how do you think, not how do you think, how do you hope that the HAL 9000 challenge is in pursuance of digital humanism? How do you hope this will change where we are now and where we are going?
Well, once we really get this moving, I mean even beyond a pilot, as we can add to our financial chest, I think we have a better shot at this. But I believe that it can change the conversation and can change the way we draw on the ideas of intergenerational collaboration.
So what's the conversation now?
Well, I think the conversation is a lot of very smart people looking at the technology and worrying or being thrilled, right? It's one or the other.
Yeah.
I'm thrilled because now we can map all of the genes. Now we can do this, that, and that, and that is fantastic, right? It's fantastic, but it's also a little bit like when we started promoting the internet.
Yeah.
And I was very much part of this. I've had recently, and satellites and satellite distribution. I've had conversations recently with some of my colleagues from those days, very, very smart people. And they're saying, how did social media become as damaging as it can be? And we were promoting the medium. Well, because we were optimists. We were technology optimists, which is what you need to be when you're going forward. What I'm hoping is that we are also technology realists, and these young people who are digital natives can bring to us those realistic ideas that affect them and therefore will affect all of us as time goes on. And that we can begin to think not just about the good stuff, but how do we make sure that bad actors cannot send the good stuff off of their skids.
Changing the conversation.
Changing the conversation in a very positive way and expanding the conversation so we're not ignoring the youth in that conversation.
I think that's going to be the title of today's episode, Changing the Conversation. I think another reason why social media caught us off guard, and you may disagree with this, it was seemingly so innocuous. I remember my first friend who sent me a Facebook invite. And it's just like, we'll send a couple of photos, put up a couple of bad photos and how you're feeling. I mean, it just seemed, what could go wrong with this plan?
Exactly. I mean, it's so easy to look at these new technologies that your friends and colleagues and mine from many years back have been developing and say, wow, if you had this, look what you can do. Yeah. So let's make sure that you get this. And that's fantastic. It's fantastic. Yeah.
But I think, I'm kind of wondering what is similarly innocuous that we're like, well, what could go wrong with this? And it just kind of goes off the rails. That's I'm going to keep my eyes akimbo on that. So maybe I could ask you, you talk a lot about women in this space. When you started, as you mentioned, there was about this many. And for those listening on just audio, this is a 0 in my hands. Mm-hmm. And now, you're giving away awards to industry leading women in this space. What does the future look like in this space of, digital innovation and changing the conversation vis-a-vis women? We've heard the slogan, like, the future is female, like, is the future female, or what does it look like in that regard? Does it look like more and more inclusion? We see that women are graduating universities at higher rates now than men. Do you see that kind of trend or progress moving in that direction, or are we getting pulled back by a Margaret Atwood vision? Where do you see the future of HAL 9000? And
well, if we turn to physics, they say every action has a reaction. And we're seeing a lot of that now, not just in this country, but around the world.
Yes.
I think that women have gained enough strength that we can continue to and make sure that our daughters and our children, well, our own children, continue to move forward. I mentioned in my article, and I was asked to be backward looking, which is not easy for me. But was there anything that I would recommend for the future? And one of the things I feel strongly about is that if we women want to continue to lead in this world and in any dimension of the world, then it's really important for us to know what our values are. And when we get into the corporate environment or the political environment, and we want to progress, and there is absolutely nothing wrong with wanting to have ambition. it's really important that we keep checking ourselves to make sure that our leadership and what we're doing remains consistent with those values. And that takes courage. It takes cleverness, but it takes courage. And so I think that the future of female leadership has a number of dimensions. One of them is partnership with each other and with men. One of them is a continual day-by-day value check. And a determination of when and how to be a positive change agent.
So there's no easy solutions, unfortunately.
There's no easy solutions. Yeah. But there are solutions, but those solutions are individual and collective, and hoping that there's a harmony among what we're trying to accomplish.
So you heard it first. Those are the top 3 tips for all leaders, not just female leaders, but particularly for female leaders into the future. Well, I want to thank you so much for this really inspiring conversation. I am putting all my hope eggs in the basket of somebody coming up with something good for the HAL 9000 challenge, because we certainly could use some good news in 2025. Thank you so much, Walda, for sharing your insights and applying all of your skills and knowledge and networks and pummeling them into this challenge. I can't think of something that is more worthwhile to do in our current time. And yeah, I think it is time that we put all of our hopes and dreams into 15 to 25-year-olds, because we've all had our chance, and it's now their turn to.
Well,
to hopefully do better.
I don't think we're finished yet either. We just have to get better at listening and taking seriously a lot of what we hear from the young people. And I also just want to encourage anybody who wants to get involved in some way in helping us put this challenge into its final form and being part of what we're doing, to get in touch with me.
Fantastic. We'll include the HAL 9000 Challenge, Arthur C Clarke Foundation, and which includes how to reach out to Walda Roseman in our show notes. So those will all be circulated across our platforms. So thank you again so much for your time, and I really look forward to having you back at the end of the year when the HAL 9000 Challenge is launched and a pilot is
on. And thank you, Rosalia. It's so nice to see you, actually, and meet you. And good luck with your young ones.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
I want to thank our guest for joining today's episode of GTWN Now, and give a big thank you to our sponsors, CMS Global, for making this episode possible. Today's podcast will be available on our website, gtwn.org, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever else you get your podcasts. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you'll be notified when new episodes drop. I'm your host, Rosalia Gitau, GTWN International Board Member, wishing you a week of wonder.